So.
You're late up,
All right.
which I was doing anyway.
Let's get started. Welcome.
Yeah, I told Brian to do it.
To the Ramsey County Board Workshop.
National order.
Today's workshop will be a presentation on 2026 assessed values for 2027 payable taxes. Courtesy reminder that this board workshop is recorded and is live streamed on Zoom webinar. There will be no votes taken during this workshop. Let's start with introduction of commissioners and presenters around the table, and then the rest of the room. I'll start. Garrison McMurtry, Ramsey County Commissioner, District 3. We'll go this way.
Mike Chonshaw, Commissioner for District 6.
Rafael Ortega, District 5.
Mary Jo McGuire, Commissioner District 2.
Tara Jevin Singh, Commissioner District 1.
Lynn Becker, County Manager.
Terry Collins, Deputy County Manager, Economic Growth and Community Investment.
Pat Chapman, Ramsey County Assessor.
Corey Erickson, Deputy County Assessor.
Kelly Miller, County Commissioner District 7.
Alex, the Chief Operating Officer. Tracy West, Director of Teachers, County Auditor.
Designated Chief Clerk.
Deanna Presley, Chief Compliance and Sons. Karen Francois, Deputy County Manager, Community Services and Supports. Formerly working with those. I feel bad, I'm not sitting.
Andrew Green, Deputy Chief of Staff.
Christy Potts, Management. And we as well as a student cruising with Commissioner Gunn.
So Gilbert, Policy District.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Today's workshop is the new format for the assessor's office to give the assessed values for 2026 as the start of the budget process for 2027. We will hear about how the county's residents can respond to property value notices and how they can appeal. The county assessor will talk about property class shifts for 2026 assessment for the taxes payable in 2027. Tax relief resources for residents will be shared at the end of the presentation, and I will now hand it off to the presenters to kick off the workshop.
I'll start. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, and do want to acknowledge my colleague, Deputy County Manager Francois, for her helpful transition here. And we'll be talking a little bit about the organizational alignment and it's the Assessor's Office Connection Economic Development momentarily, but we did our introductions. I think maybe we'll move forward to the workshop goals today. You do the cursor, you got to click and then some things. Yep, and then there we go. And so we'll forego this one. We'll talk, as mentioned, a little about the organizational alignment, and then Director Chapman and Deputy Director Erickson will walk us through the appeal timeline. We're going to slightly bombard you with a number of graphics, and we just want to compel you to, sometimes these can get confusing. We're going to be comparing and contrasting a bit, so feel free to ask questions as we go along. And then, again, provide available resources to residents about appealing their tax value assessment. So if we'll move forward, this is a little bit of a blurry and complicated graphic, gratitudes of AI. But we wanted to show the connection between economic development and the assessor's office. We talk a lot about the economic development growth cycle. And as we think about organizational alignment and why the assessor's office fits so nicely into economic growth and community investment is because there really is a symbiotic relationship between economic development, how we invest in our redevelopment projects or our real estate within Ramsey County, and how we utilize the assessor's office to not just be reactive in terms of what is the market doing, but for us to be able to review kind of the trends, the valuation trends across tax classifications, so that in turn we can be strategic in terms of how we invest. So the assessor's office really does play both a reactive and a proactive role in terms of not just kind of being a reflection of what the market's doing, but also allowing us to really be strategic in terms of what's happening with tax shifts within our local economy, and what does that mean in terms of how we build out programming, services, and investment projects. And so really there's a complicated kind of cycle here, but just wanted to kind of show the nature of that. Moving on. And so at the start of this year, the assessor's office moved into economic growth and community investment. it has been kind of going on for a while that Director Chapman and Director Josh Olson have been having routine meetings. Oftentimes when we meet with prospective businesses or developers, they talk a lot about the value of property because that helps to inform, acquisition prices and helps to negotiate real estate. It also plays a significant role in terms of the types of financial tools available for economic development projects. And so this has been a pretty seamless transition in terms of AGCI. It's really exciting that we're doing this workshop today because it builds on a lot of the economic development and kind of real estate momentum we've seen in past presentations. You've had both housing stability and community and economic development before you to talk about how we invest in the housing continuum. It obviously has a huge impact in terms of the composition of our tax classes. We've even taken a look at our arena portfolio. You'll see a little bit more about our tax exempt uses. And then of course, kind of the culmination is building stronger together and how we invest in our projects and where we go in terms of selling county-owned land. So as mentioned, the assessor's office does a tremendous job in communicating market trends, which we'll go over in a little bit, and to determine, how do we invest more strategically? And they do a great job in terms of distilling how our investments are strengthening and diversifying our tax base. And so with that framing, I'll turn it over to Deputy Director Erickson, I believe, for the next slide.
Thank you, Carrie. Chair McMurtry and Commissioners, thank you for having us. This next slide shows the major themes of our presentation. The 2026 assessment, which we will present today, marks the start of the 2027 budget cycle. To that end, the next slide will provide more detail on the actual timeline leading to finalizing the 2027 budget. Today, we will present the 2026 assessment, including showing how market values changed in different property classes and potential tax shifting impacts. And we will share the information on the various resources available to residents to help them with their property taxes. Here we see the timeline for 2026 property values and 2027 taxes. All properties are valued based on market and property conditions on January 2nd, and value notices were mailed about a month ago. And we want to emphasize that the time for residents to appeal their value is now. If residents have questions about their value, the first step is to call our office at 651-266-2131. And I can repeat that. It's 651-266-2131. And they have until June 1st to do so. After that point in time, excuse me. Yeah, after that point in time, all value appeals must go through Minnesota Tax Court. And the deadline to file in tax court on the 2026 value is April 30th of 2027. 2026 values are used to calculate 2027 taxes. And the estimated property tax notices will be mailed in November. The county's budget is finalized in December, and property tax statements for payable 2027 will be mailed next March. So right now we are in the middle of what we call the open book appeal season, which is the value appeal time period, which runs from March to June. 168,000 value notices were mailed to residents and property owners last month. And as of late last week, we've had just under 1,100 calls, which is down just slightly from last year. And so far, the number of appeal appointments conducted by staff is about the same as last year at just under 250. The annual in-person of open book meeting was held at the Plato building on April 7th. 58 residents stopped by to speak to an appraiser, with 43 property review appointments getting scheduled. The open book meeting and appeal period have been promoted through a social media campaign coordinated through Ramsey County Communications, as well as a promotional piece on the county's Hmong language podcast. And we can't miss an opportunity to promote the annual assessors report. The 2026 version is hot off the press and available on the county's website. This report contains a lot of detailed information on value changes by cities and property types, including market recap reports produced by our residential and commercial managers, which include really nice details on specific real estate segments. The report also contains assessment summary data, such as what Pat will begin sharing on the next slide.
One question here, Commissioner Jevon Singh.
Yeah, just a quick question. Who in community would find this report most helpful to them? Who should we be promoting that this information is available?
Well, certainly all property owners would find it interesting. It shows a lot of detailed information. Probably most helpful to residents would be the median value adjustment information per neighborhood. But there's also summaries on specific property classes and things like that. Also, any sort of real estate professional, certainly realtors, people like that, absolutely.
And our city partners.
City
Yeah.
partners would be, community partners, all of the nonprofits that are interested in it. It's a valuable report for anybody that wants just to know the value data of what's happening in their space. All right, Chair McMurtry, commissioners, my turn. Let's get nerdy, okay? Let's get into some numbers. That's been a great theme going to the new service team is I'm among nerds and we all speak nerd and it's very fantastic. Community economic development and you don't even want to hear the conversations. You guys will think we're from another planet. So where are our values trending right now? We're at an all-time high, 78 billion or so. And you can see the low from the economic downturn of just 38 billion dollars. So a lot of growth in the county over that period, and it's been quite sustained and substantial. So that's a great thing. Let's talk about the result of that, which is the tax capacity. As you can see on here, you can see the tax capacity is also at an all-time high of 915 million in that area. So tax capacity is the county's ability to generate tax based on the property uses. So we'll dive into some more numbers. When we look at the assessors,
Yep, Commissioner John.
Yeah, just going back to that slide of the tax capacity. Of course, we always hear from residents about how the property taxes are, unsustainable for them, especially as they retire and or are on fixed incomes over time. I guess, how can we explain it to residents about this tax capacity value? About is it for the long term, how can residents continue to stay in their homes? If their income fall flat and or are on fixed incomes, if the property values increases, but then their income actually doesn't.
Commissioner, Chair McMurtry, Commissioner Zhang. So that is a question that is very large in scope and a little bit out of my wheelhouse. But the part that I can talk to you about is as tax capacity increases, it allows municipalities to make some different budget decisions too. Because between tax capacity and budget is where the tax nexus meets. So as we are becoming more fiscal responsible with budgets and our tax capacity increases, it lowers the impact to each specific resident. But things to take into consideration are which properties create what tax capacity. So commercial properties create about twice the amount of tax capacity as residential properties. So as we grow a healthy balance in there, it can lower the burden on residential. And I'll illustrate some of those points later in a slide when I talk about what the tax capacity shifts look like for 27.
Okay, and then may you also remind us about how much of our current tax base is in residential?
All of that information will be.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
Have Commissioner Miller and then Commissioner Ortega.
Mine was, thank you. I think we're on
ESP, because I was asking the same question, is if we look at the income and people's, you know, their average income or just like inflation and how that works and then ties into this, because like I appreciate how you said as cities and counties budget better, but families can't budget their way out of increased costs if their incomes are flat and not increasing as well.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, we haven't done the assessment against income. I
Okay,
think that could be a part two that could be really interesting, and it might be something that fits nicely into the next ECI. plan.
okay.
Yeah. Commissioner Montoya?
Our property values have been falling in certain parts of the city, right?
Yes, sir,
So how does that affect the tax capacity if they continue to keep falling?
yeah. Chair McMurtry, Commissioner Ortega. So as a general rule, our county has not been falling. The whole city of St. Paul is still heading north. And not every place is falling in value. And, so Minnesota over the years is really considered like a 4% state for residential property growth. If you looked at a timeline over history, it's always about 4%. So there's a tendency when we're not at 40% growth to say that values are falling. And sometimes that's the message that gets out there. If there's 1% growth, it's considered that the values are falling. You'll see when I illustrate some of the numbers on a real broad basis, the assessor report goes to each individual municipality and talks about it. All the taxing jurisdictions in the city of St. Paul are represented there. You can see what the residential, commercial, all the main points are doing. But as a overall, residential is really flat this year. We're at about 1% movement north, but we're still overall growing just a little bit. Mhm. So move on here. Okay, so reviewing that data, there's two big questions that come. What does the property tax values look like, and what does the tax capacity increases look like? And what types of properties are showing those increases? So let's dive into a little bit of the aggregation of some of these segments. So this is a reminder. This is what 25 pay 26 looked like. Overall, we were about 2.5% in the city of St. Paul, suburban Ramsey about 4%, countywide 3.25 overall. You could see residential made up a lot of that at about 4.5 to 5%. Commercial was very flat, even negative in some areas. Industrial is a stalwart at that 3 to 4%. And then apartments were down in a lot of areas with barely a minimum growth in suburban Ramsey County. Now, this was for pay taxes 26. This was 25 pay 26. Let's compare that to what we have right now.
And Pat, would you mind talking about the difference between the residential classification and apartments?
Yeah, I sure will. So I have that as a note here to level set residential. So when I talk residential, that's an aggregation group determined by the Department of Revenue that we all talk about. And that is 3 units or less fall into the residential category. So duplex, triplex, condominium, townhouse, those kinds of properties, single family, homestead, non-homestead, all of that is the residential aggregation. So apartment starts at 4 units or more.
And just to clarify, even for condos that are like multi-unit, if they count as residential?
Yes, as long as Commissioner, as long as the ownership is each unit owned individually, those condominium buildings are all 1 unit each, so it's 150 units. There are 150 individual units.
Okay.
So that's residential property.
Commissioner Jimison?
As you're going through these different slides, one of the questions that I have is, I know that Ramsey County is unique in Minnesota as far as its size and its urban, the density of it, the smallness of the number of acres we have, the population we have, and then as far as where we are, I mean, the Minneapolis or the Hennepin County is so much larger and broader and diverse as far as what it looks like for its commercial and residential property tax base. What other mid-size urban counties in the nation are similar types of counties that you look to kind of benchmark where we are at with some of these different, with the conversation you're presenting today, you know, what would be like urban areas that we should be clocking in our head that might be comparable?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Jordan Singh, I never have done anything like that. The challenge with Minnesota is the property tax system. You know, so we've got enough to try to value and classify in our own. That would be a great thing for us to kind of take a look at, and maybe there is a comp out there somewhere in the United States that we could take a look at and see historically if we're tracking. So I got a note down. I'll take a look at that and we'll see.
Well, and perhaps you answered the question with if we have a unique tax structure where we're really, there isn't a direct comparable, that's good to know too. Because a lot of times constituents will say, well, how come you don't do what Dakota does? Or how come you don't do what Hennepin does? Or what about Kansas City? And it's nice to be able to say there are unique paradigms within which we are working here in Minnesota. And Ramsey County is unique in Minnesota, and so at least then you can have a real apples to apples kind of conversation about it.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, that I kind of analyze the surrounding counties and see, we talk a lot as a group, our region of the state, all of us assessors get together. We were just together. We have our own breakout session, AMCO. And so all of those areas, Hennepin County and Dakota County specifically, since you mentioned them, we're all trending very, very similar in valuation. So the growth is happening very similarly around all the economic factors in our three counties are affecting properties very, very similar.
One quick question, piggyback off of that, and then
Yeah.
Commissioner McGuire. One, I actually agree. I think getting some information like that would be incredibly helpful for us as we kind of further tell our story as a county. But I was also wondering, as we look at some of the changes in like the tax capacity, which we're about to get to, are there certain goals that we're hoping to hit so that we can see, you know, certain changes in apartments or industrial or commercial to help ensure that we are bringing down the pressure on property taxes? Are there specific goals that we want to set as a county that you all have been working on?
I'll defer to my.
Mr. Commissioner, unless there's some, I would say, standard kind of like you want to hit this in terms of certain percentages, we haven't ever set goals, but I love that. I love it. And I think, again, it's going to be, you know, as we dig deeper into all of the pieces and components we want out of this next ECI plan, setting goals is going to be a big part of that, and in a way that we just haven't dug into that. As we get deeper into the presentation, you'll look at, you know, the tax classes and, you know, what makes up a really fiscally strong economy. And we've talked about tax exempt. You'll see more of that in Director Chapman's presentation. And I do think we should set some goals as it pertains to what we have control over, and that's county-owned land. And you know, is it 100 disposition of 100 acres a year? Is it, you know, looking at some of that to get serious, and the tracking against it, I think would be highly advantageous for us. So I appreciate that.
Commissioner
just-
McGuire?
Big picture, you made the comment that we have is it Minnesota that has a complicated tax structure, or Ramsey County does, but we're all bound by
The
state laws
state of
in this.
Minnesota
The
has
state
a
of
very
Minnesota.
complex classification.
Yeah, and I just wanna, because this is how I think of it, because, you know, we all get residents that say, you should make the tax system more fair, or you should simplify it more. And the fact that we have so many classifications is because they were trying to make it fair. Because by having different classifications, then you have different people paying different rates based on so many different things. Am I correct in?
You're
in-
100% correct,
yeah.
Commissioner, and I have a slide that illustrates
perfect.
one of those things that I'm gonna point out to you that will
Okay.
make that very clear. How classification can impact value to tax capacity
Yeah.
generation.
Because the public they want one thing, but then when it happens anyway, it's not always the way they want it. Fair taxes is lower taxes to everyone, and so, but thanks.
We're gonna do two more quick questions from Commissioner Jefferson and then Commissioner Jean, and then we'll No, okay, so just Commissioner Jefferson, and then we'll get back into it. We knew this would happen. This is your group.
Yes.
There's just a lot of questions, but Commissioner Jefferson.
Well, when you had me at nerding out. One of the questions I have is, we know when we think of a financial portfolio, that at different stages of somebody's stage of life, there may be a different mix that people think is the ideal time. If you're thinking about retirement, there's different mixes of bonds versus stocks versus cash coming in. If one is so lucky to think of such things. When I think about our tax capacity and the kind of development, this is where the assessor's office and the economic development team working together makes sense, is the idea of, is there some kind of ideal or for thriving community, what such a portfolio would be as far as a mix of single family to residential, to apartments, to nonprofit, to, is there some kind of, if you were to do Sim City and start from the beginning, or Sim County, and like, is there some kind of, you get 3 stars for hitting this ideal mix of investment? Is there such a utopia one works for?
My island.
She's in the city too.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Jefferson, not in the assessing world, right? That's like a community economic development aspirational goal. But we can help, the way the assessors help the community economic development do that is, we tell them what has happened in the past and which segments are growing and which segments are shrinking. And that helps them project, well, this is what I need here and this is what I need there. But it's kind of using history to develop a picture of what the future could bring. Okay, so I didn't cover this yet. Okay, so this is 26, page 27. As you recall from 25 to page 26, they were 3-4%. We're 1-2% right now. So we're about half that. You can see residential is really flattened out. We're like at that 1% growth. Commercial, pretty slow in the city of St. Paul at around 1%, a little better in suburban Ramsey County, about 4%. And then you can see industrial is the same, 4 to 5, maybe 6 even in some places. And then apartments has rebounded slightly to be around that 4% growth. So that's a helpful picture of what that means. So what does this translate into?
Can I ask one quick question?
Yeah.
Or can I just ask one quick question on the 25 versus 26 for apartments in the city of St. Paul? Do you think that has to do with policy that was created in the slowness? Because if this is payable in 26, then it would have been buildable in 23, 24. And that's when they had that stall. Is that something? Am I on the right?
Yeah.
Are you asking if rent control?
Yeah.
Right. Control.
Let's call.
Yeah.
Was it rent control?
Was rent control the reason why maybe we had slow development in apartments in the city of St. Paul? Now, I mean, because this is data that's.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner, Chair, yeah, I mean, what I would say is that there wasn't enough of a difference to be able to isolate that something like that was going on.
Okay.
And the trends that we were seeing for both suburban Ramsey County and the city of St. Paul over both 25 and 26 mirrored what was going on metro-wide. So
Okay.
it's more of
No.
a market-wide sort of adjustment with the apartment market. So no.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk 26 assessment for payables, 27 kind of assessment countywide. Our total estimated market value is 90 billion. Now that includes the exempt portion, which you can see is almost 14% on here on our little handy dandy pie chart. You can see the exempt market value of about 12.8 is the total of that market value of that exempt 14%. You can see that the taxable market value then leaves us at 78 billion. And we had about 760 million of new construction. And we'll talk about where that new construction happened and what kind of properties were getting constructed. One thing I do kind of want to point out on this chart is we've aggregated out the apartment class into 2 segments. And you can see that we have the apartment and then we have apartment 4D. What that simply means is that low income apartment segment that we're gonna take a look at individually, so I can show you how tax capacity changes based on the classification. And it's really evident in apartment 4D structures. As you can see, residential is about 60%. And commercial is around almost 9% there. Okay, so it's
Quick question
Yeah.
on that with the 12.8 billion in the exempt market value. Do we know, I guess I'm trying to get an understanding of what is the amount of tax capacity that we are missing out on because of the amount of
Great
exempt
question.
properties that we have.
I do have that, Commissioner, and I can send it to you guys. I got a
That'd be
giant
great.
nerd sheet that has all that, and so I will break it down and get it to y'all. So I have that.
Commissioners.
Yeah, just quick, now, we've had a conversation around tax exempt property before, so I don't want to go all into that, but as we were driving to the mayor's inaugural address, I drove by the state fair and I thought, that's a lot of property, and I was just curious, does that fall into that capacity or is that,
no.
no? Okay.
So the state, I'm sorry, Chair, I'm jumping in these questions. I just love it. Calm me down, calm me down. So the state fair is a unique property, right? They have their own statute that is written that anything is owned by the state agricultural society is automatically exempt. But all of the things that are attached to it, we have personal property IDs on. So Sweet Martha's gets a tax bill. Personal property tax. She pays personal property tax on the real estate inside of the state fair. The ground is free. The buildings are not.
Okay.
So, do you pay on like the Hippodrome and, is it still called the Hippodrome, the
The
Hippodrome? and
Hippodrome
Parade
is a
Building?
little
Okay,
different. It's
okay.
owned by the Ag Society, so some things in, some things out.
Oh.
Hangar in, Hippodrome out.
Ah,
Chair Commissioners, real quick,
Yep.
just clarity on that. I do see we have the value for the exempt segment at 12.8 billion. Is that makes up that 13%, right? So I think just wanting that kind of, we'll say, just, that's what I'm looking for. Deaggregated. Is that, yeah, that's what you're.
And I think
okay.
even just what of that 12.8 is county owned properties.
Oh, that's.
That would be-
Because of
Yeah.
that 600
Yes.
acres.
Yeah.
I can aggregate it
Yeah,
any way you guys.
Because that way, that drives those metrics
Yeah.
that you're talking
Yeah.
about, measuring against ourselves, how much
Yeah.
we dispose, how much we develop, that would increase
Right.
the base.
If there's hot spots,
Yeah.
maybe in the
Yeah.
county that we have extra ability, yeah, we can pinpoint all of them.
That was my question.
Okay.
Was asking to desegregate it a little bit so we could see like, is it faith organizations? Is it state? Is it churches? Whatever.
I'm not
Cool.
talking on attorney for you. We have those aggregations. For most.
Yes, Commissioner Chair, yes, we do. Yeah, we've even attempted to show what the use would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of this exempt-
We've done
Taxes.
hypothetical tax capacities of those, like, is it gonna be an office building? Let's apply a hypothetical tax capacity.
Oh,
We've done all that.
that would be cool to
We've
see.
done that for all of our major redevelopment projects. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so let's compare 26 taxable market value and 27 tax capacity. So this will show a shift, right? That's what we're gonna try to talk about through this. You can see on the left, residential makes up about 68% of the tax capacity, but residential property has a much more beneficial tax rate compared to commercial and industrial properties. So they only make up about 60% of the total tax capacity. You can see that commercial only makes up about 10.3% of the taxable market value, but is responsible for almost 17% of the tax capacity, or the ability to produce tax is greater in commercial. If we look at the segment of apartment 4D here, this is what I want to illustrate about a beneficial tax rate. We have determined, apparently in the state of Minnesota, that this is a viable thing that we really want to produce. Well, this is just the result of that. Apartments make up about 3.3% of the total taxable market value, But with their beneficial rate, they only are responsible for less than 1% or 0.75% of the tax capacity. Apartments 4D are very valuable in our community. But this is the reality that they're responsible for 0.25% on the tax capacity because they have the most preferential rate in the state. So that's just, I wanted to illustrate that shows clearly how things can change based on tax capacity. Commercial almost doubles. 4D goes way down. So that's the influence of capacity, tax classification on your value.
Mr. Jimmy Singh and then Commissioner Shaw.
I'm just gonna complicate things further. When we look at residential, if we were to apply all of the different like homestead credits and all of those other kind of things, that an individual property tax owner can apply for, that would, I don't know if it would reduce its tax capacity, but it would reduce the revenue generated from that property based on the credits or waivers that they can apply for. And since those are fairly standard practices for many folks, I mean, do we have a sense of, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, I think that too often we hide the financial implications of tax codes on homeowner and individual homes versus the implications of, say, like these 40 apartments. And I just want to make sure that we're looking at all of that. And the impacts of that.
Okay, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Jemison. So inside of taxable market value, when it goes from estimated market value in residential to taxable market value in residential, the homestead market value exclusions are taken out there, right?
Okay.
So if you're trying to ask, do we track how much of that homestead market value exclusion is happening in our county? We do have those numbers as well on how much market value is being excluded for residential properties. If I might not be understanding.
So it sounds as if you're already capturing those homestead credits when you go from one to the other. That's what I was wondering. That was my question, is to make sure that that's.
The homestead market value exclusion,
Is,
the credit is a different thing. But the homestead market value exclusion, where you have $100,000 house and you only pay tax on 70,000 of it because you get a reduction of $30,000 right off the top, that is captured.
that was my question. So thank you. That's very helpful to know. Thank you.
That is captured.
Okay, I have Commissioner Jean, Commissioner Miller, and then Commissioner Ortega.
Pat, may you just talk a little bit more about like what we're seeing with the shifts again? I know it's written at the top there, but essentially like what we're seeing here then is just that both like residential for the apartments and the exempt properties are getting shifted, and where you see both commercial and industrial, their tax capacity increases then, right?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Jean, yes. And on the next slide will show you year over year shifting. So I'm going to take tax capacity from last year and compare it to this year so you can see what's shifting from residential to commercial and how the numbers are moving around a little bit. But in this case, what it shows you is that based on a property's classification, it takes taxable market value and changes it to tax capacity. And that's a very powerful tool for moving around who pays taxes. So you can see residential should be responsible for almost 68.25%. But because their classification rate is more beneficial than a commercial rate, they're only really responsible for 60%, providing about 8% relief to residential properties when it goes from taxable market value to tax capacity, which is the ability to produce the tax.
Which is why commercial and industrial segments have to grow.
Right.
Kind of shift to accommodate the residential low class rate.
Yeah. As those things expand, they eat up more of the wheel, and even more shifting would go from residential to industrial and commercial.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna keep you busy, Commissioner McMurray. And mine might be kind of similar to Commissioner Jevon Singh's. What happens with this when we see TIF districts or other taxing credits or other, finance, like deferred payments? What does that look like on here? And do we see that added in after like 9 years, or when do those expire?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, great question. I think the TIF districts aren't reflected here. I think that's maybe phase two, is to
Okay.
demonstrate, what we're unable to capture as a result of existing TIF districts. But, that's where I think this gives you a snapshot in terms of, the value proposition by class rate, but doesn't necessarily, like the 4D is a great example. We don't get to capture all of the taxes that we would off of, we'll say, a market rate apartment building as a result of the 4D kind of reduction. TIF brings it all the way
Right.
down, and so we're not controlling for that, but it does demonstrate this kind of, tax base versus policy considerations that cities and counties have for resident. Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Ortega?
What's exactly is in the 4D? What, I've never heard of that until now.
That's, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Ortega, that's literally the classification by the state is 4D. But what's in that is housing that has to meet, income criteria. And I think Corey can probably
Yeah.
be a little more explaining.
Chair Commissioner Ortega. Yeah, it's a program that's administered by the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, excuse me. And there's an application process and property owners have to apply by March 31st. There's certain criteria that the property has to meet. Some of it would be 20% of total units have to meet certain criteria. Something like Section 8, low income housing tax credits. Another criteria would be rent and income restrictions at or below 60% area median income. So things like that. And it's administered to them.
So in essence, that's part of subsidizing affordable housing.
Correct, yes.
And
Exactly.
that's a state process that sits outside of the county. So oftentimes they'll come through our solicitation process and they'll say
So
that.
here's my next question, which goes to why I keep saying there should be a mix. We have too much affordable housing in any one area. You are lowering the tax capacity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
Or shifting it.
you need that
You're
balance. you know.
shifting it. We're shifting it.
Yes.
Well, it's completely gone.
Yeah.
Right. Is 4D new or no? It's been there, it's just, I'm just not familiar with it. 4D is been there for a while.
Yeah, it's been there at least 30 years.
Oh, wow. So I just haven't seen it now.
Is synonymous with low income housing.
Yeah,
Some
okay,
people
that's
call
how we-
it, but
that's
I
how
wanted
we
to be more
talk about it.
specific
Yeah.
and just call it the 4D so that you guys get used to that vernacular, because when
Mm-hmm.
they talk about it up at the House and Senate, it's all 4D. They all.
And do they keep adding things to it then too, or? Or is it
Well,
always
the
been
big
the same?
change in recent years, Chair Commissioner, is the class rate getting reduced to 0.25%. So that's what's reflecting that
Oh.
more dramatic shift here.
Okay,
It used to be 0.5% or 3/4.
There's 0.75 on a certain tier of the property and then 0.5 on the other tier. So it was a dramatic decrease.
It's the lowest tax rate in the state. Lower than agriculture.
But still paying some taxes.
Yeah, still paying tax,
Versus-
providing a lot of benefits, so that's where the balance is,
Right.
just the benefit and the. I just wanted to completely illustrate it because it really shows how, when something is classified something, how it can move the needle on the tax intensity.
Just so piggybacking on Chair Ortega's comment, then the idea, if as Ramsey County, we do have goals around investing in such properties. The idea is to make sure that they are equitably distributed across our municipalities and school districts so that we're not concentrating that loss of potential tax revenue into certain neighborhoods and areas.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I do want to add, so we beautifully have this TIF presentation coming up next week. I might suggest to our financial advisor that he add a 4D section.
Yeah.
And then he also explained the unique relationship to TIF with the school districts because they are held harmless from TIF districts. And so there is a unique piece there because Yeah, a lot of people think that there's like a formula that goes into consideration when a TIF district is created, and then the state kind of puts in more funding in the event that they see an influx in TIF districts. So we can make sure that he adds that. Yeah.
Just quick time check. We have about 20 minutes left, so.
Get on my horse, here we go. So let's talk 26 tax capacity against 27 tax capacity. So as you can see on the left, that's our 26, which is around 59.76 on residential. And that has come down to 59.11. That is a result of that capacity shifting to other properties. As you can see, industrial went up slightly from 9.5 up to about 9.8. Commercial likewise, apartment likewise, and then, you know, the state assessed shrunk a little bit. The 4D stayed pretty static, but went up just a little bit. So that's how that impacted. When the residential shrank its piece of the pie, it gave it to those other property types. And those as are illustrated here. And that's what we call the shifting. That's literally how the shift works. And as you can see, exempt still don't pay now. So new construction values countywide, we were just kind of trying to introduce about how much new construction is happening in the county. Obviously, there is a giant spike that I need to talk about, right? And I will on the next slide, I'll illustrate that. But as you can see, if you drew a trend line from 16 to 26, it would be either side of that trend line a little bit, minus 23, which I'll talk about in detail on my next slide. So recent peaks and declines, 2020, a cycle downturn accompanied by a slight increase of interest rates. And then in 23, we had a peak driven by strong apartment construction. A bunch of apartments got finished all at the same time. And I can give you some of the names so you maybe understand what I'm talking about. The Ruby and St. Anthony completed that year, if you're familiar with that one. Harbor at Twin Lakes and Roseville, the Collection at Island Bridge. A couple of those happened, all that. So we had about 4 or 5 large apartment buildings that represent about 400,000 in added value. That just happened to be full value that year when they completed. So that was a big year for that. And then the decline, or decline's a tough word, return to normal was about resulted in a little spike from the interest rates and level of construction in by supply and demand things around Ramsey County, inflation costs. So that was a big reason for that spike that one year is we just had a bunch of, you know, a couple hundred unit apartment complexes complete. So we got them on for full value. So let's look at new construction around the county by kind of the aggregations property type. You can see that residential was about 34%, industrial around 12%, commercial about 7%, apartments was 24% for 26, K 27. But you can see exempt had about a 24% increase based on some of the new construction. We've had a couple of good size exempt projects up around the Capitol and some other spaces. So, but this is our new construction picture, what for this year.
And that's not including TIF. TIF isn't considered tax exempt. I know we don't get taxes from TIF, but would this be TIF properties or no? Just like you said, capital, around the capital area.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, TIF is a tax function after all of this happens.
Okay.
So TIF tells you where the tax is going.
Okay.
So it's outside of all the things. We don't see the dollars, but the calculation's the same. It's just where that money goes.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, property sales trend, establishing a new normal. As we talk to area experts on sales in Ramsey County, you can see we used to be about 6,000 to 6,500 sales was a pretty normal thing for us. And if we extended this way back, it was pretty common to be around that 6,000 sale number. And then we had the COVID spike which, once we figured out how to sell houses during COVID, there was a huge spike for it. As interest rates were around that 2% and, you know, and we could sell houses without even going to them. So, it was a big spike. Now the last 3 years, we're in that 4,500 to 5,000 range for sales. And as we talk to industry experts, they figure this is what the new level for our county should be around, somewhere in that. The impacts of this is really what we worry about. And I don't think there's gonna be a significant impact from this activity shrinking by about 1,000 sales a year. We still get plenty of sales inside of our property segments, except for vacant land. And so for us as assessors, we're still gonna be able to value property accurately and equitably based on the amount of sales that we are getting.
Commissioner Shaw? Oh, go
Just
ahead.
really quick, just to add on to that, this does have an impact, however, on programs such as the Environmental Response Fund. That take, you know, a percentage, a small percentage on these transactions. And so we have seen a major reduction in those programs as a result of this new trend.
And then kind of similarly, I want to mark something in the budget. So Tracy, can you help? This also kind of drives a little bit of recorder fees or not? Am I wrong? On this one?
Yeah, there will be reporters fees associated with sales.
Yeah.
Sales are down on that reporting revenue.
So I think it's just good for you to see how some of these things affect our budget pressures. And that's been one that Tracy's department has brought forward, you know, over the last couple of years now. So, yeah, thank you.
I was just going to mention the exact same thing that Deputy County Manager Collins mentioned about the ERF funds. So that just means that like for any type of development, there would just be less type of support from the county at least. So any development that we have here is going to be redevelopment and it's going to cost more, and we'll definitely need like more like state or other sources to help with the cleanup.
Yeah, exactly.
So to summarize, the 26 market for the taxes payable 27, Ramsey County aggregated estimated market value, all-time high, 78 billion. Slow growth in residential due to low demand and elevated lending rates. Additionally, there could be some impacts on affordability in housing as values are still maintained at a high level. Development continues, driven by mostly our large projects in the county. Local economic outlook remains stable. Industrial market is chugging right along, you know, that 4 or 5% we're seeing. Apartment market is stabilizing after many years of record growth and then a mild setback last year. The retail market is surprisingly stable, even though e-commerce is getting more and more popular. There's still a decent retail market. Mostly that's because there hasn't been a lot of new construction in that space. So existing retail is holding in there. And then the office market, we continue to try to figure out what's going on with that as the hybrid model is really taking hold. Conversions to residential could play a role in stabilizing this market, but other forces as we look at the office market.
I do want to flag, Mr. Chair, I'll send it to you. The Port Authority had just recently done a study on industrial projects. You might have seen it in the news. And I think there is a real desire for the city to understand, like, when they rezone away from industrial, that actually is kind of takes the bottom out of some of the stability of this kind of increase. Like, you know, those industrial properties are rare and very critical for jobs and for tax base.
Yeah.
So.
No, I
don't know if you're-
remember, I think it was in Pioneer Press where they mentioned how for every dollar of tax revenue, like almost $2 in return for industrial.
Yeah, so as you work with your city colleagues at the city council, you know, it's good to have those conversations about, you know, the kind of tug and pull, especially around affordable housing, I think has been the crux of some of that tug and pull, but it's you're trading off something that, you know, really does impact the county as well. Yeah.
So what can residents do to help mitigate some tax? The property tax refund through the Department of Revenue is the biggest lever that a resident can pull to relieve some tax. There are 2 different versions on there. There's the one based on income, and then there's one based on tax growth. So if you go to the property tax refund at the Department of Revenue site, it will lay out all of the criteria for that. That is a state administered program. Homestead credit for owners, they can call that phone number there, that 651-296-3781. And that's the regular and special M1 PR form to fill out for that. If they have a homestead question with the county, they can obviously call us and we can direct them with any resources they want. Again, that number 651-266-2131. And then there's some veteran services information. The vets service could help with the veterans home credit. And let's see, there's the veteran service right there. And then on our website, something I really want to point out on the assessors page is we have understanding your property tax videos in the 5 main languages that are represented in our county. And it's right on our assessor main page. And so if they want a video talking to them in their own language, there's an opportunity for that on our website.
Commissioner Jefferson and Commissioner Navarro, okay.
Yes, so I had a constituent reach out to me over the weekend, Pete. And I was just, it was so opportune when I opened up my board pack and I thought Pat's gonna have an answer to this.
Great.
So he was looking at the special refunds and was filling out the form, specifically the M1 PR. And basically was very concerned over what he felt was very intrusive information and complexity of information for this, including income and social security number and these kind of things. And the question I have is, who is in charge of creating these forms? Just if you have any insight as to why certain information like like the information you talked about would be required for a refund from whatever appropriate entity.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, it's required in the statute, the way the statute's written around homestead. To file a homestead in Minnesota, you have to have an I-10 or a social security number. To get the refund, it's through the Department of Revenue. We don't have any control over that. The Department of Revenue has all the income restriction information, through the income tax, and then property tax up there has the refund. So that is the form prescribed by the state, and we have no purview over it.
Thank you.
And Commissioner McMurtry, I might ask you this too, because I thought you were testifying on this, but was there a bill to have an automatic, have you not have to apply for homestead, but you get it automatically?
No, not the homestead, but.
Oh, but something.
So I submitted an amendment as AMC for that to be a part of their legislative platform. I have not got an update from their team on where that's what the current status is, but that was something that I proposed of making it automatic.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, I'm part of the Minnesota Association of Assessing Officers. That's been a long-standing bullet point on our platform to make PTR automatic, the property tax refund. There are a few snags at the state on data from each side that I don't understand, but we have been pushing for it as well. It'd be the renter's credit now, the renter's version of it is automatic.
Okay.
But now we're trying to get the homeowner one to be automatic. Seems they have all the numbers. Can't they just give people money?
Thank you. Thank you for that. Both of these are really.
See where we're at. Oh, we're done. So one thing I do there's one thing I really want to highlight here one more time for everybody, not really in this room, but if anybody's watching online, it's the time to look at your value notice that you got in the mail. It's under the property tax statement. So once you're calmed down about seeing the property tax statement, look at the next piece of paper, which is your value notice. And if you don't think your value is accurate for 2026 taxes payable 2027, call the assessor's office at 651-266 2131 and have a conversation with us. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners.
Any follow-up questions,
Thank
anything for?
Well, yeah, I had one.
Yeah.
Pat, in your last statement, how would the regular person on the street know what questions? They look at their property, how would they know what to ask?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Ortega. That is a challenge of the system a little bit, right? So if you're in doubt and you see, let's say your value, you see 210,000, you think there's no way I'm getting to get 210,000 for my house, call and have a conversation with us. Let's talk about your specific situation at the office so we can narrow it down to your information. So call.
But I had a neighbor come up to me and say, my value went down, but my taxes went up.
Call, we can explain it. Yeah, we can go into each, because each situation is so unique
Yeah,
sometimes,
that's why
Commissioner.
I'm trying to get hints that I can tell people, look out for, you know, common clues or hints or something.
Yeah. It's
difficult,
just
I
so
know,
difficult
I know.
because each situation, Commissioner, like in some cases, people look at their neighbors and maybe their neighbors qualify for some program that allows tax relief. And so even complete valuations that are very similar, right next door neighbors could have totally different tax results based on state programs. Call us, let us have the conversation and we'll explain it.
Commissioner Jefferson?
Yeah, I was gonna say, as a homeowner, you know, we worry about scams and also other kind of opportunist kind of entities. I opened up a letter as a property owner, basically saying, as you know, Ramsey County, I'm sure it was a form letter, so you
Yeah.
could see that Ramsey County was in blue and the rest is in black. So I'm sure Dakota and Olmsted and everybody else got these too. So it's not specifically us, but said, you know, it has, you know, overestimated the tax value and it's complicated and expensive to get that reassessed, but we can help you. And I'm just wondering if I got that, I'm sure other homeowners received that recently too. What would you say to folks who would somebody have to use an outside organization like that? Like, how simple is it to get the help directly?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, you just hit a nerve. And I was just up at the House talking against a bill to try to make that kind of thing even more available. They want to change the code and so no, in Minnesota right now, you do not have to pay anyone to appeal your 26 value for your 27 taxes. If you got a letter from a company called Ownwell and they are saying that you are overestimated, call the assessor's office at 651-266-2131. Have a conversation with us first, because you don't have to pay anybody to appeal your valuation right now. And that company is pervasive in all of the metro area. They are sending out letters claiming to be able to get people all kinds of relief. And it's really not founded as far as I can see.
And just FYI, with Metro Surge too, there were some scams, and so our communications did start a social media campaign about scams that were coming from the county, so we'll continue to, you know, keep that up.
And one last comment is, and in part of that assessment or reassessment or reevaluation, from my understanding, there is a board or a committee of peers or residents who represent community. Can you just explain so that when people are in community, they think, well, who would be making this decision? Is it just you in a back room, or how are the decision on reassessment?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, yeah, the process right now is we're in the open book phase, or step one, where you can have a conversation with the assessor. If you don't come to an agreement with the assessor, for free, you can elevate it to the Special Board of Appeal and Equalization through the county. And those are residents on that board that have met the training requirements for the state and have some background in real estate. If you don't agree with the assessor or can't come to an agreement, then you can move on to that. If you don't agree with what the Special Board of Appeal and Equalization's saying, Then you can go to the more formal version of the Minnesota tax court, and that's where cost starts to incur, is at the tax court level or the third level of appeal.
So somebody who had a question first could get that answered over the phone. They could have a conversation to say, but look, you need to have a guy come out and see my backyard. It isn't the big pool you think I put in here. It's a kiddie pool that I dump out at the end of the year to keep the mosquitoes away, because we learned this morning. And then if you all still didn't get to come together, they could come to this peer review board, and all of that is free.
Yes.
All of that is free
Just making
and
sure, because
Yeah,
it's
it's
very
so important.
confusing and
It's
people get
important.
intimidated, and we don't
Yeah.
want folks to not feel as if they have some agency to get their questions answered.
yeah, and Mr. Chair, Commissioner, all of that is also laid out on their value notice that they received in March. All of the process, all of the information, but again, call the number and let's have a conversation and we'll steer you in the right direction to get resolution or to be heard.
Thank you.
Just to keep following up on that, because I have heard from residents who do get these things and they wonder what to do about them. Do we have that sort of prominent on our website? Like, don't pay attention to anything you might get that looks like it might be from us, but it's not. I mean,
It's a long
we are
headline.
not.
Like I said, we've been doing really targeted
Yeah.
social media on scams.
Targeted.
Yeah. I just don't know if that's quite the.
No. Yeah, we might wanna just advise
Yeah.
people, don't,
That
this may
website's
be,
gonna
but
blow
I
up and
know.
everything.
The whole page.
We aren't, I don't know, we're not gonna send you this, cause this is the real reason, this is the real, if you get a call from us, it's not us,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a great point, to make sure that we, on a number of things, make
Yeah.
sure that residents are aware of not only the scams, but just these other resources
Yeah,
that we have.
exactly.
And that it's all free, and they just need to call 651-266-2131 to get it done.
Great.
Thank you again to Corey, to Patrick, and Carrie for this presentation. I think it's great to see the synergy between these two departments coming
Great.
together. I know one of the follow-ups we discussed is getting that disaggregated data around the exempt properties, just the tax capacity, county-owned land, all the different things that we discussed. And just looking forward to continuing this conversation, especially next week as we get into TIP and all the other different areas. So if no other questions, thanks everybody.
Good job.
Yeah, really good. Thank you.